Those words lingered in the air, fragile and uncertain, as if they could shatter at the slightest touch. It wasn't a phrase a powerful CEO usually uttered, especially not to a janitor wiping floors in her office late at night. But that night, under the harsh fluorescent lights and the quiet hum of empty offices, something unexpected happened, something that would change two lives forever. The janitor, David, had been working late again, sweeping corridors and mopping floors in silence. Being a single dad meant balancing long shifts at the office with taking care of his 7-year-old daughter, Lily. His life was routine, predictable, and exhausting. He never imagined he would be part of anyone else's story beyond the simple interactions of day-to-day work, but then he saw her, Ms. Victoria Blake, the CEO of the massive tech company, sitting on the polished floor of her office, her designer heels kicked off, tears streaking her carefully made-up face. She looked so small, so human, something he hadn't expected from the woman whose face he'd only seen on billboards and in boardroom meetings. He hesitated. Part of him wanted to walk away, thinking maybe she needed privacy, but another part, a deeper, gentler part, urged him to ask if she was okay. Are you all right, ma'am? He asked softly, voice almost swallowed by the vastness of the empty office. Victoria looked up, startled, as if she hadn't realized anyone else was there. Her eyes, glistening with tears, met his in a moment that felt suspended in time. She didn't speak immediately. She just nodded, the corners of her mouth trembling. Then, in a quiet, almost broken voice, she said, It's just been one of those nights. David nodded, understanding more than he let on. He had nights like that too, nights where the world felt too heavy, and the weight of responsibilities crushed him. I get it, he said simply. Sometimes it helps to just talk. Or even just sit with someone. I can wait. Victoria laughed softly through her tears, a sound that startled David with its fragility and sincerity. Then, without any warning, she blurted out, Will you be my date tonight? David blinked. Did he hear her right? A CEO, a woman he had admired from afar, was asking him, the janitor who cleaned her office floors, to be her date? His heart raced, a mix of disbelief, confusion, and something warmer, something he hadn't felt in years. He started, but she interrupted, smiling through her tears. I mean, not in a fancy, public way. Just, tonight. For dinner. Just someone to not be alone. He realized then that sometimes, life doesn't follow the rules. Sometimes, it surprises you in ways that make your chest ache and your heart soar at the same time. He nodded slowly, finding his voice. Yeah. I'd like that. The next evening, David found himself dressed in clothes that weren't his usual uniform, nervously straightening his tie in front of the mirror at home. Lily watched him with wide eyes. Daddy, you look fancy, she exclaimed, twirling around in her princess pajamas. You're gonna like her, Lily, David said, ruffling her hair. She's different. Special. When they arrived at the restaurant, Victoria was already there, waiting with a tentative smile. She looked just as nervous as David felt, but there was a softness to her demeanor, a vulnerability that made her beautiful in a way that went beyond appearances. Over dinner, they talked not about board meetings or office politics, but about real things. About childhood memories, about dreams, about the moments in life that leave scars but also teach strength. David spoke of his late wife, how he balanced work and raising Lily alone, the exhaustion and joy wrapped into every day. Victoria shared the pressures of being a CEO, the loneliness that sometimes seeped into her luxurious penthouse, the fears she kept hidden behind power and poise. The night wasn't perfect. There were awkward silences, moments where David feared he had said too much, or that she would suddenly realize he didn't belong in her world. But there were also laughter, shared glances, and a connection neither of them could ignore. By the end of the evening, the ice had melted, replaced by a warmth that felt both terrifying and exhilarating. As they walked out, Victoria reached for his hand, the gesture tentative, but full of meaning. Thank you, she whispered. For tonight. For understanding me. David squeezed her hand, feeling an unfamiliar lightness in his chest. No, thank you, he said. For letting me in. The days that followed weren't without challenges. Gossip in the office, the judgments of friends and family, the skepticism of the world, they all tried to interfere. But David and Victoria navigated these storms with patience, honesty, and respect for each other's worlds. They discovered that love isn't about social status or appearances, it's about connection, empathy, and courage. Months later, David stood in the same office where they first met, but this time, it was filled with laughter, not tears. Lily ran around, calling Victoria Aunt Vicky, while the two adults shared a quiet moment, hands intertwined. Who would have thought, Victoria said softly, that a janitor could change my life? David smiled, looking at her with tenderness. And who would have thought a CEO could remind me that life still has surprises worth believing in? They laughed, the sound mingling with the soft hum of the office lights, as if the building itself had approved of their story. And in that moment, both knew that love often arrives in the most unexpected places, sometimes on a night full of tears, sometimes in the form of a simple question, will you be my date tonight? Life had tested them, challenged them, and yet, in the end, it gave them something beautiful, a chance to rewrite the rules, to embrace vulnerability, and to discover that happiness often waits where we least expect it. And as they walked out together, Lily skipping ahead, David whispered to Victoria, tonight was just the beginning. Are you ready for the rest of the story? Victoria smiled, eyes shining. I'd been ready my whole life.